Hi, readers. Welcome to Goddess Garden Book Chat. We are bringing a nonfiction novel today called The Operators. It is written by an investigative reporter, Michael Hastings, who had the opportunity to do something that I don't think will ever be done again. So I hope you enjoy this story. For many of us who may take a listen, you might remember everything about this and the fallout because of it. So let's talk when we get to the personal perspective after this amazing deep dive with my chat squad, and we will share some thoughts. Stay tuned.
Ever heard of a journalist, good enough to bring down a top U.S. general with their reporting?
Oh, yeah.
We're diving into that story today with Michael Hastings' book, The Operators. It's a really raw look at the war in Afghanistan from inside General Stanley McChrystal's command.
Yeah, so we're talking 2010, Obama's presidency, Afghanistan wars hit a stalemate. Huge debates raging about troop surges, what strategy even makes sense.
Right.
That's where McChrystal comes in, supposed to turn the whole thing around. And Hastings, he's right there with him, giving us this, fly-on-the-wall view.
So not just military strategy stuff, then.
Yeah.
This is, personalities, politics, the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely. One of the most, I think, gripping parts of this book is how it shows the tension between McChrystal himself and the Obama administration. Hastings doesn't shy away from showing McChrystal getting frustrated with civilian leadership.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Even criticizing people like Vice President Biden.
Whoa. Okay, so you've got a 4-star general airing his grievances about the White House. Just got to send shockwaves, right?
Oh, absolutely. And this is where civil-military relations, that whole concept, becomes so important. You need clear communication. You need trust between military leaders and the elected officials, right?
Right.
If that breaks down, like Hastings shows happening, it can be, disastrous.
And in this case, it really was. Hastings, he didn't just, sit on this explosive stuff. He published it, this super famous Rolling Stone article, A Runaway General. Talk about a career-making piece.
Yeah, career-defining, for sure. That article, it had such a huge impact, McChrystal ended up resigning because of the pressure.
Wow.
And what Hastings did, reporting what he saw, even if it was controversial, it gave the public this raw, unfiltered look at the war, totally different from the official story.
Okay, so we've got this clash of personalities, a war that's going nowhere fast, and a journalist, right in the thick of it. But to get why McChrystal's job was so tough, we got to look at the strategy they wanted him to use, counterinsurgency.
So you want to win, right? But how do you actually win hearts and minds in a place like Afghanistan after, years of war?
Yeah, you always hear that phrase, win hearts and minds.
Right, win hearts and minds. That's the whole idea behind counterinsurgency or co-ain. And that's what McChrystal was supposed to make work.
Okay, so in theory, how's it supposed to work?
Well, you win over the local population, basically. You make it clear that they're better off if they side with the government, not the insurgents. So that means providing security, right? Maybe helping improve how the local government works, getting some economic development going.
Right, make life better so they don't need the insurgents.
Exactly.
But Hastings is writing this book because something went wrong, obviously.
Yeah.
It wasn't that simple.
Oh, yeah. You see, he's arguing there was this huge gap between the coin strategy, on paper, and how it actually played out.
How so?
One big thing he hits on is this. Not understanding Afghan culture deeply enough, the tribal dynamics, all that.
Oh, okay.
Some of the coin stuff, it even backfired because they didn't think about local customs, or they accidentally alienated the very people they were trying to win over.
It's even with good intentions, you can totally miss the mark if you don't get the culture.
Exactly. And on top of that, Hastings is critical of, the whole U.S. attempt at nation building over there.
Nation building meaning?
Trying to create this, strong central government in a country that's always had these deep tribal loyalties. Hastings says that was always going to be a tough sell, given Afghanistan's history. They've resisted outside control for centuries.
Right. It's not like a blank slate to just impose whatever system on.
And while all this is going on, let's not forget, there's still a war happening. Hastings doesn't let you forget that either.
Yeah, he was, embedded with them. He's seeing it firsthand.
Oh, yeah. He gives you that soldier's eye view. The casualties, the violence, always the threat from the Taliban. It really makes you compare the official story, which was often about progress being made.
Right, which you always hear.
To the ground truth, as Hastings calls it, which was way more chaotic.
Makes his position as a journalist really interesting. He's got this access most reporters would kill for.
Totally.
But then what he reports, it ends up contradicting the official narrative.
Yeah.
Which I guess brings us to the media's role in all this, something we haven't really gotten into yet. It makes you think, right, like how much of what we believe about anything going on in the world, especially wars, is just like the story we're being told. And even with this incredible access Hastings had, his reporting still caused a huge stir.
Yeah.
What's that tell us about how the media works or doesn't work in these situations?
Yeah, Hastings, he's a prime example of how much power Access has. Most journalists wouldn't get anywhere near what he got, seeing things firsthand with McChrystal's team. So he could report with this, like, depth and honesty that really challenged the official line coming from, well, everyone else.
But people pushed back, didn't they? Like,
Yeah.
wasn't there criticism about him being reckless by putting out there what McChrystal was saying in private?
Oh, for sure. That's the tough spot journalists are in, especially with conflicts. You
Yeah.
want to tell the public what's going on, hold those in power accountable. But at the same time, you put out sensitive info, it could have consequences.
And even beyond that risk, there's always the issue of bias. Even if a journalist is trying their best, just being around certain people, certain experiences, that shapes how you see things.
Absolutely. And then there's how the media itself, the organizations, they shape the story too. Sometimes they might, pick and choose what info to use or present it in a way that backs up what their audience already believes. So you got to look at different sources, be skeptical, especially with something as messy as a war.
We were talking earlier about how some of the headlines about the war at the time, they didn't exactly match up with what Hastings was seeing on the ground.
Right, like all that reporting about the troop surge, how it was going to be this big turning point, how victory was in sight.
Which, again, is what you want to believe.
But Hastings says, not so fast. He's arguing that the surge might have even made things worse, created more resentment, gave the Taliban more targets.
Wow. So even something that seems straightforward, like we're sending more troops, we're going to win,
Mhm.
can backfire in all these ways you wouldn't expect. It's like what you were saying about those official statements, always talking about steady progress being made.
Right, right. Hastings pokes holes in that big time. He's saying those claims, a lot of times they were based on stuff that was misleading or honestly just spin.
To make things look better than they were.
Exactly. What Hastings lived through on the ground was way more chaotic, way more violent than anybody in those official reports was letting on.
Makes you think, huh? How much of what we think we know about the news, any big event, is just these carefully crafted versions of reality?
It's the big question, isn't it? And it shows why it's so important to seek out different viewpoints,
Yeah.
Challenge your own assumptions. Remember, there's always more to the story than what you first see or what you're told to see.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the operators, one thing's for sure. This book is a powerful reminder. It reminds us of the real cost of war, what happens when countries interfere in other countries, and how crucial journalism is to hold power accountable. It's the kind of story that sticks with you.
For sure. What Hastings did, it's still relevant. Even all these years later, it's like a challenge to really think about using military force, about the limits of trying to rebuild other nations, and how we, just as people taking in information, how we deal with these stories we're told about these big, complicated events.
Makes you think. And on that note, here's something to chew on. Given what Hastings showed us about Afghanistan, how should we approach military intervention in the future? What lessons can we actually learn? It's not an easy question, but an important one.
This deep dive has a lot of tentacles when you have enjoyed life in North America as long as I have. Because I feel like in 2025, we will never have access to actual information from a reporter invested in sharing what is really happening with the American public. We are fractured when it comes to the information flow because almost all information is coming from privately owned companies. And so you always get that spin. But there are those reporters, those small papers, those independent journalists that really dig deep and they try very hard to tell you things aren't as they seem. You're not being told the whole story. And there are so many things about the operators that resonate with past narratives of wars that we feel like we were told everything that was happening minute by minute, and future wars that we may get involved in or try to insert ourselves in as a nation that comes to resolve and put things to rights. Um, you're going to know the spin that best benefits the office in charge, or the narrative that best makes people feel like things are being accomplished and their tax dollars are well spent. This is a true story. I remember so much about this because, as with most people who were African American, Obama's presidency was something that we didn't passively participate in. We were connected to the things that were happening, decisions that were being made, policies that were being denied because of another party's influence and control over decisions. So I hope if you get a chance to enjoy this book. And side note, thank you to The Daily Show. Thank you to Trevor Noah, because he's the person that interviewed this reporter. And that's how I found out about this book. It probably never would have crossed my radar were it not for my love of comedy and watching that particular show. And no shade to Jon Stewart, because God knows I'm a huge Jon Stewart fan. I bought his books. So I was really happy to see him come back. But I think I really do miss Trevor Noah. He brought a special kind of intuitive reception to his guests that I enjoyed. The conversations were so rich and so meaningful and impactful, and I'm thankful for them. So I hope you go out and find books like this and study things of the past that resonate perfectly with what's happening now and what may happen in the future. So until our next read, friends, see you in the libraries.